Today we got Magnus Appelberg from Finland, who is, well, he's a lot of things actually. So I don't want to put him in a box, but we're actually interviewing today because he just came out with a new book about taking ice baths. So welcome, Magnus.
Thank you, Daniel.
Welcome, Magnus. This is going to be very interesting, Daniel. I can't seem to get my head around why somebody might want to jump into a freezing cold lake for 1 hour, but not only the psychology behind it, but the physiology behind it. By the way, what's the name of your new book, Magnus?
It's in Swedish, Iskall Sinnesfrid, which is translated into English like ice cold peace of mind.
Ice cold peace of mind. Wow.
Yeah.
Here it is. Here's Magnus by the way. So yeah, I read it. Fantastic book. So and I think we're going to dig into that because I think, like Patrick said, 1 hour is of course super extreme, but once upon a time, even for you, even though you're Finnish, you were a beginner as well.
I was a beginner.
Yeah. So can you take us back to where it all started? But also we're going to dig into this, what you can do if you're a beginner, if you're new to this, and if you've done it for some time, which most people have done in Finland, but also for those people who really want to push it, what they can do. So please go ahead and give us some brief history.
Well, brief history. I'm 61 years old, so now no history can be brief. And by the way, I'm going to be grandfather for the second time very soon, any day.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. So about ice bath, me as a Finn, I've been doing it since I was young. And the usual thing is you jump in, you scream, you jump out. And then you go to the sauna and have a big laugh, and then you repeat that. And I've been doing that for 30, 40 years, something like that, before something extraordinary happened. So no matter how often I went to the sauna, into the ice, and repeated that, the exposure times didn't very much expand, and that so it got so unpleasant I had to get out. And I remember like 10, 15 years ago, one winter, I really tried to swim. So when I got at maximum, I got up to 25 meters, and it was like I could barely move my fingers anymore. So you can't blame me for not trying before. But then something magical happened, like 6 or was it 7 years ago. I met a quite different yoga teacher, Simon Borg Olivier from Australia. So he has nothing to do with the cold because he comes from subtropic area. And I've been a full-time Ashtanga yoga teacher for more than 20 years. So yoga, breathing, the whole package was very familiar, but he somehow, in very few sentences, opened my eyes to that I know shit. And what he was talking was about CO2, about vasodilation, about oxygenation, the Bohr effect. And I was like, hey, nobody's listening, really. Why don't you everybody scream, wow? And then I started to apply these ideas about even longer exhalation. You know, in pranayama, in yoga breath, you kind of breathe in for 4 counts, breathe out for 8 counts. And it's because you want a more parasympathetic response. So always my question has been, why only 1:2? Why not 1:10? Something like that. But this Simon kind of, he was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And I started to apply the idea of even longer exhalation to get even higher CO2 tolerance. And somehow that impacted my cold exposure, that I could suddenly swim 200 meters. And that was, wow, something has really happened. What about if I start to prepare myself before the ice bath? What would happen? And it happened that I could sit for half an hour. And it was like, what is going on? And at that point, I really wrote you, Patrick, that I wrote to numerous people. And you were kind of one of the few ones who responded.
Well, it's hard not to when I think your email address was the Society of Ice Holes or something to that effect. So I says, yeah. So I said, there's something in this one.
Yeah, that was the first approach, humor, and very funny social media videos, which kind of was something I never experienced before. You don't get 500,000 views just like that. But then a friend of mine who said, listen, get me in shape. Do what you have to do, get me in shape. I'll put your business in shape. So I put him in shape, and he said, listen, humor is nice, but let's make this sound proper. So now I call it the Ice Lab method.
Oh, that's so, yes.
Yeah.
Now we're getting it. And you know what's striking me, Magnus, is you've been doing this for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be kind of disingenuous, but how come people have not heard of you? And how come people have not heard of your feats? It's kind of interesting because I suppose so many people associate cold water immersion with the Wim Hof technique, but yet you've been doing it for 20 years before. And why do Finnish people do it anyway? What's in the Finnish psyche that they want to jump into ice cold water?
It's something like life is hard, then you die. It's like cold water, we have plenty. The winter is long, dark. Let's make it even colder, even darker. Make a hole in the ice, jump in, don't ask, come up. And the thing is that you feel amazing after this. But for me, this is not enough. Amazing is not enough. For me, it's how can you kind of use this cold water as a laboratory for putting into use into your life. So it's about facing absolutely extreme stressful situation in a very calm manner. So then it spills out. When you can do it in the cold water, it spills out in your life.
Can I hold you there? Because the title of your book, you have peace of mind linking it with the cold. Do you think that's the biggest thing that you're achieving and other people are achieving when you do cold water immersion? It's almost that you have to train the brain to deal with stress.
Yeah, you have to train the brain to deal with stress. And it's not only kind of that's a psychological part of it, but we have a physiological part of that also. And that is your autonomic nervous system. How to get a handle of your autonomic nervous system. You got to get a handle of it before you jump in. If it's like you tell somebody who is really stressed out that, hey, you know, ice baths, they are really relaxing. You learn to calm down. Now jump in. What will happen? You'll probably die. So I don't want to kill anybody. So my message is you really have to get a handle of calming down before you go in. So as you get in, the cold shock kind of hits you in every aspect. Also the psychological aspect, you feel panic. But if you have learned before you jump in how to calm down with the breath, you continue to do that as the cold shock hits you. And then sooner or later, in a couple of sessions, you will learn how to get back to the cool, pun intended, as you still are in the cold. And when you figure that out, then it's kind of total new picture. It's a total new planet you're landing on. So you discover that this is possible. You can stay here. This is nothing. And when you come up, you realize what you have done. The next time you hit a very extreme situation, you might use this same lever to get your cool back.
I can agree with that, Magnus, what you said, because sometimes when I do cold baths, it's if you're prepared and you go in, it could be, well, I wouldn't say necessarily relaxing, but it works, the preparation. But if you go in and don't do the preparation and you do it just to get on with it and you're kind of semi-stressed, it acts as an amplifier. It amplifies the stress that you already have. Patrick, I would say somewhat to breath holds. If you go in calm and you kind of just surrender into a breath hold versus, okay, now I got to do my training, I have 5 minutes, it works in a different way. So the same training could have two different outcomes, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like a medicine. Medicine can be toxic in wrong dosage. So the beginner dosage is like, when I give an intro session, it lasts between 1.5 hours or 2.5 hours, depending on the situation and the group. And then we go only once into the cold. So I use kind of 1 hour just to explain what is going to happen on all levels. And then we do 20 minutes or breath. And then we go in. And then we come up and well, if it's very short, we can go straight into the sauna and just feel what is going on in the body and in the mind. So it's kind of a meditation. And then I try to answer all questions they have. Why didn't we die? We stayed in 5 minutes. I heard people drown when they go through the ice. What's the difference? So on.
What do you do, Magnus? What type of breathing exercises do you do in those 20 minutes for beginners?
For the beginners.
Will you put on the light?
Pardon?
Sorry.
Okay. So my main emphasis on techniques that you can elongate your exhalation.
Yeah.
So we go towards a very, very long exhalation. So to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, that's number one. And when you do that in a very relaxed way, so you don't press your ear hunger, the CO2 tolerance starts going up slowly, a little bit. So you will feel better circulation in your fingers. People tell that after 10 minutes, they are very warm fingers. Their faces are blushing. And say, okay, this is the first thing. Your blood circulation is now going better. This will be less painful when you get into the cold, as long as you can continue with long exhalations. So my first emphasis is, I had this emphasis on breath for more than 30 years. The most important thing is to learn to relax your exhalation, because that's the relaxation phase of your most important breathing muscle, the diaphragm. So when you learn to relax the diaphragm, the inhalation comes naturally. You don't have to work with that. So that's for beginners. We do a couple of breathing exercises with all emphasis on the exhalation. And then with the last breathing exercise, we use the same exercise as we go into the cold. And then always go with the clients into the cold, and I remind them all the time, now you're breathing too fast, now you're breathing too strong, calm down, longer exhalation, don't mind the inhalation, that comes later, and so on.
Okay, and you tell them also to expect to hyperventilate when you hit the cold?
Yes, I'm telling them the whole story.
Yep.
But it's not so hard, because in Finland, most people even thinking, well, I think all over the world, most people even thinking about going to the ice cold makes them hold their breath or start breathing faster. So then it's a very, so you can demonstrate the difference very clearly even before you go into the cold. So it's never a surprise that they go.
Yep. Yep. And how do you do when they actually go down? Do you do it quickly, as in 5 seconds, just go down, or you take it very slowly over 2 minutes?
One exhalation.
Okay.
With one exhalation, it's like, okay, now breathe in. On the exhalation, you start walking the stairs, up till you have the water here.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it will be a very prolonged, painful situation. It's very painful to stand with water up to your knees. Your toes will go numb in like 10 seconds. But if you immerse yourself up to the neck, it's different. You get the whole body starts responding in a different way. All kind of the thermoregulation starts already. But the most important thing is to understand that if you are in a fight or flight mode, what you are teaching your body is to either get out or use willpowers to stay there. That's fight or flight. And that's not adaptation. And then you psychological teaching yourself, this is dangerous, you got to fight it, and then you lose the whole point. But so if you can go in, calm down, your body, as soon as you are relaxed, or let's say not fighting anymore, because relaxed is a very strong word in this case. So when you stop fighting, you start adapting. That's the thing. You either fight or you adapt, but you can't do it at the same time. Well, you can adapt to fighting. It's not a good idea.
Yeah. So then they stay in for as long as they can.
Yeah.
And then when they come out, what do they do? I know it depends a lot, but if you're a beginner, been in for a minute or two, whatever, what do you do to kind of heat up?
Yeah, we do mostly static holds in deep squat positions or planks, or we do very, very slow squats with holding our breath, because somehow that helps to heat up. So no cardio exercise, because that makes the blood run too fast. So the difference in heat in the body starts level up too fast. You have a very extremely cold skin, but your inner temperature, core temperature is quite all right. But if the cold kind of gets swept in too fast, it's really terrible. But if you stay less than 5 minutes, there's no danger of that. If you can stay cool 5 minutes, the hypothermia is not very likely to happen.
And that kicks in. The sign of that is you start shivering, and that comes usually shivering a few minutes after you come up.
Yeah, a few minutes after. It's like 5 or 10 minutes after you get the full cold experience. And so then if you start these 5 or 10 minutes, you do this exercise I described, just to slowly heat up, it's a very mild shivering you might get, or none at all. And one thing what I discovered from listening to Andrew Huberman's podcast is that if you put your feet in warm water and hands, palms on the hand on warm surface, you really heat up very effectively.
Sure.
So if you if you stand in a tray of warm water and do deep squats, it's like, wow.
Mm.
There are areas, there's also your feet, your face, and the palms of your hand, where it's the very kind of effective heat receptors or donators. So if you heat up too much during exercise, you can cool down through your palms, for example.
Yeah.
But then the reverse is true. You can heat up through that.
And so how long do you do those exercises after to heat up?
I do like, first I ask them when we come back in the warm room that dry yourself and just stand with your closed eyes and feel any shiverings going on. There might be some slightly because it hasn't started yet, but we start with doing the exercise anyway. At some point they say, okay, now I'm really feeling some shiverings now. Then we continue. And when they get smaller, the shiverings, then say, okay, let's go and enjoy the sound.
Mm. And we can get back to that. But what's really, really interesting about this, I think, Patrick, is when you combine breath work with cold, and also now the measurement devices for HRV during the cold bath. So you've seen, as I've seen, that your HRV goes up a lot. Pulse rate could go down as well. But here, I guess, could you expand on that when these things happen with the pulse rate first, maybe, because maybe not the first minute or two, depending on your
then the pulse goes up.
Expertise.
Yeah, it's a shock kind of. so all stress hormones are flooding, and then your pulse goes up, blood pressure goes up. But if you can learn, teach yourself to calm down through the breath, you go back to the breathing exercise you did just before you went in, then your pulse rate goes down, and it keeps going down, and your HRV goes up quite significantly.
Yeah.
And then I haven't very much measured what happens during the warm-up exercises, but when you are finished, you feel warm, dry, you sit down and do measure your pulse and HRV. The HRV skyrockets, and your heart rate is really down. It's amazing. Yeah. Then you have done a full cycle. You have prepared. You have done the cold, you have heated yourself up properly, and now you just relax. At that moment, your recovery rate is like grandmaster.
Mm. And what is there a difference? I know you do it, but if you also have cold water in your face, does that also even expand, or decrease the heart rate even more and increase HRV even more?
It does. It gets your heart rate down really significantly, and that has. This is a common knowledge actually. To wet your face, you get your heart rate down, and I go all the way under the water. I dive under the ice, but this is you don't start like that. There's nothing for beginners or even intermediate. It's just a more advanced phase, but it's like you've done something, and now you are comfortable with that. What would be the next level? So next level is actually free diving under the ice. But
I got some ways to go there. We'll talk about that later on, Patrick.
Two things: free diving and ice bath.
How long do you stay under for, Magnus? When you go down under the ice and you're staying there, do you not get terrified the fact that you're claustrophobic? And if you,
it's like if you're claustrophobic, let's take this like free diving, because I do some free diving too, and I have a very good teacher in free diving, Johanna Nordblad, who has done 103 meters in only swimsuit, no fins, under the ice.
Wow.
Yeah, you say I'm extreme. I always put her as an example. I'm nothing. Right at the moment, I don't do free diving under the ice because where I spend my days, I have no partner to dive with. You don't dive alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I stay half a minute tops. It's just to get the really intense feeling of how cold can I get, and that's it. For in free diving, you don't do anything unexpected. Like in cold baths, you don't do anything rash. You go slowly. It's like I have a totally proven method, a protocol, how to get your head under the water. You start with your underlip, the whole mouth. You wet your nose, you wet under the eyes, you go up to the brows. And then if you can do that with one very relaxed out breath with a sound, then you can go, then the next thing to go under the water is nothing. But I'm always listening to the sound of the person. I'm going under the water and listening. How does it sound? Does this person do it in a relaxed way, or is he or she still pushing it? So we get rid of all the pushing. No pushing. Just relax. Be comfortable in a very uncomfortable situation.
It's not, sorry, Magnus, to cut across you. It's not always easy, though. A lot of people come in and they're so stuck in their heads and they're drowning in thoughts, and you're literally putting them into ice cold water. Okay. They're automatically going to take their attention out of the mind and into their body. And because these people, and many people, number one is they find it difficult to connect with their breath. Sometimes to connect with the body is difficult, but even to relax is difficult. We've had people over the years ask, how can I relax? Just even with that. And I think what you said about the exhalation as well is super stuff, that during the inhalation, the foot is taken off the pedal. So it's a more sympathetically driven, a stress response. And during the exhalation, if we can really slow down and have a prolonged and relaxed exhalation, the body is telling the brain that everything is okay. So you want the body to tell the brain that everything is okay before you get into the water. But how about different personality types? So somebody comes into you with high anxiety and panic disorder. Do they find it more challenging than somebody who would naturally have a calmer disposition?
You know, I love those kinds of challenges, really, because those people can achieve so much more. Right? Because for somebody who has really severe anxiety, if I can get them to calm down for 5 seconds, it's like, wow, this major change. And what I learned like 32 years ago from Kosana Luka from Roy Hart Theatre, she's not alive anymore. But she that was the time when I was at the dance academy still. She taught us that your voice is the muscle of the soul, very poetically. But instead of emphasizing breathe out, I give them different sounds to concentrate on. The very simple thing that anybody can do. And I tell them, listen to this sound, listen to your own voice. Your voice will tell yourself how stressed or how relaxed you are. Because if I tell somebody now, a relaxed exhalation, and they go, I mean, seriously, I experienced that. It was like, what was that? No, take it really, and they tell them, relax exhalation, and they go, was that good? I go, oh my God! No, then I give them, okay, let's say let's say that was even better. Now make it longer, and so on. So you pick up something small which is connected to the voice, the human voice. There's a kind of it could also be described as the mirror of your soul, or it's actually a mirror of your psychological or stress or relaxation.
And I wonder also, you stimulated the vagus nerve by virtue of the sound, because the
Yes.
vagus nerve
Yes.
is innervating the throat.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's a good one. But what I think is interesting, because we haven't gotten to the last part, but which is if you do sauna, but when you combine breath work with cold bath, you get like I would say a stacking. You combine two things for a deeper impact. If you then would add something on top of that, which is sauna. But how often do you also, because then you can call it contrast training, how often do you incorporate sauna into your training as well?
I always have saunas backup.
Okay.
As a safety.
Okay.
As a safety, the back door. And everybody goes through this safety back door. Me included. Not the ordinary life. I never use sauna in the morning when I jump into the sea. But the thing is, I want the people to have a positive total experience, because it's always a danger that after the cold exposure is, for example, if it's a good group atmosphere, people are supporting each other, they stay longer, but you don't realize that before 10 minutes later. And if you don't have a sauna backup, it's a terrible experience. You shiver for half an hour, and then you forget all about how good it felt at its best. And so it's a safety, and I want people to feel safe.
But also, it's tricky, because also the contrast from going to 0-degree water to 90 degrees or whatever you have in the sauna could also be say a little bit dangerous. So how quick is the transfer? Do you wait 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
The transition is the 5 or 10 minutes or even more of warming exercises. Yeah. We don't do that in the sauna. We do that before the sauna.
Yeah.
So when we have experienced the coldest, let's say after 10 minutes, it is the coldest moment. So if you have been doing warm up during these 10 minutes and you only feel a slight shivering, you go into the sauna, the shivering stops, and you feel just so super relaxed. So you have experienced the small shiverings, and then you are totally all right. But there's always the danger that these small shiverings, they don't stop for half an hour. And if you haven't experienced that, it's like scary. It's not pleasant. You don't want to come back. I want people to come back.
So for somebody who's a beginner, you said you do this hour of preparation. They stay in for a few minutes or whatever. Is this something that they can do every day or 3 times a week? How do you progress to actually, because one time doesn't mean that much, but how do you get this to be a habit? What is your suggestion there?
My suggestion is something I've been suggesting about yoga for more than 20 years. It's like if you do something 3 times a week, it will become a habit. So it's like learning yourself a new language. If you practice 3 times a week, in 3 weeks, you will feel, okay, I got the basics very well. After 3 months, okay, this is totally doable. After 3 years, you have a totally new life, or you speak a totally fluent language. But I think in this cold exposure, it goes even faster. But if you really want the full benefits of something, you should do it 3 times a week at least. But
So how do you do for kind of the next level? Because I know in Finland most people are more or less experienced. So the ones who want to take it a little bit further, is it the same type of preparation, or do you do it in a different way to get to the next level?
I do a little bit of different preparation. I use more breath holds. to get even that to a more next level, to in a comfortable, safe way experience uncomfortable feelings, sensations. So to get stronger sensations of air hunger. But it's always the same. When you feel air hunger, you feel you're suffocating. What you are doing, you are raising your CO2 tolerance. It's a good thing. Blood circulation, oxygenation, parasympathetic response. So always remind them of that. So then we do just harder breath holds. And then when about the cold exposure itself, you can stay longer. And then when you feel really comfortable, like 5 minutes or more, then we start going deeper, deeper, deeper. But through the protocol I just described, never just like, I don't dunk people. That's what I do because I'm used to it. I just dive head first in, but that's because I've been doing it for a long time.
Mm-hmm. But this is where experience kicks in, because I can see some similarities, Daniel, with breathing exercise as well, that we're doing. Yeah. I've made mistakes. As I often said, people with panic disorder, I put them into panic attacks, anxiety. And I did it too because I dunked them into the breathing exercises. And now in the last 10 years, we really go gently if an individual has any predisposition towards anxiety and panic, and gear them up. But even with elite athletes, we start off with a few easy breath holds, 5 of them, and then go into the 5 stronger breath holds. There's something about the human body that we have to, it's almost that we're preparing it. It's like this little warm up. So you're doing the same with the ice, but that's not always how. There's something out there in the Western world that the bigger and the better and the louder the better and the more you do it. And that's kind of taking, it's opening it up for mistakes, mistakes that I've made in the past, but mistakes that people make in the present day.
Yeah, but water has been a great teacher for me. When I was a teenager, I did competition swimming for 10 years, so from age of 10 to 20. So I watched the black line on the bottom of the pool for hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. So I think during those 10 years, I got enough of competition sports anyway. So that extreme went away. But then when I met Kosana Luka, as I described, the experience I got under the water, when we use our voice under the water, the meditative state I got in was kind of wow. Something I had been looking for since for the last 12 years, doing very, very strong breath works and emotional catharsis. And this was just with a long voice under the water. Suddenly I was in a space which I normally had to work enormously to get to. So that was wow. And then I met my wife, and she was afraid of water. I mean, literally. You couldn't get her into a pool. But then I found a 32 degrees warm pool. So we went in together, she grabbing my hand, shaking. And 1 hour later, using the same techniques I learned from Kosana, she was just sinking underwater, lying still, holding her breath on the bottom of the pool. I was like, wow, this is something really extraordinary. And we created a method for group relaxation and individual treatments. And now these same techniques I actually apply in ice cold water, and it works, but it's much harder. So it's only for advanced levels.
I think, like you said, Patrick, it's very interesting with the breathworks that we're doing and cold, because there's a biological aversion to hold your breath. Most people feel a suffocation if they're not used to it. Most people do not want to go into cold water because there is an aversion, and especially if you, like you said, if you put your feet into it, you're almost cramping right away. So there is a similarity, and when you combine those two, it seems to me you can actually get a double effect, because you do strong breath holds before, like you're saying, and then also you're in the cold water, but for a long time, for those who are experienced.
It's interesting though, because this is where it could be small but confusing, Magnus. When you do really light breathing and slow breathing, and carbon dioxide is accumulating in the blood, it's a vasodilator, and you'll feel it, as you said, the face goes flushed and the hands get warmer. But when we do a long breath hold, the bradycardia kicks in, the diving response kicks in, the heart rate slows down. The body is going to be conserving blood flow for the heart and for the brain, so it can reduce peripheral blood circulation, and the hands can get colder. Does it then make any difference? What do you think is the better approach going into the water? Is it better to do the really light and slow breathing and surrender to it, which is kind of more activating the parasympathetic response, or the breath holds, or do you do both? And the other thing about the breath holding is, do you breathe in and hold the breath, or do you have a normal inhalation and exhalation and then hold the breath? What sort of differences do you see from the reduced volume breathing to the breath holding?
Okay, so this kind of also which level you are, how comfortable you are with the cold. So for beginners, it's only about the light, very long exhalation. That's the only thing I care about. And the next thing is how light can you make the inhalation? So you have a light inhalation, you have a very long exhalation. Then you get to the level that okay, now you can comfortably actually explore your sensations in the body. So you get even more out of your mind into your body. So it's a total vipassana practice then.
Well, it's a little bit different than it's because you have the air hunger.
Yeah, you have the air hunger.
Because
for me, for me, pretty experienced vipassana practitioner since 19 years of daily vipassana practice. For me, air hunger is a sensation. It's a bodily sensation. So by exploring, just keeping my attention on the sensation of breath hunger, it's vipassana.
It is, and this is, and I don't want to cut across you, but say Vipassana by S.N. Goenka, the first instruction that he will say is do not change your breathing. But in actual fact, what we say is absolutely change your breathing.
Yes. And you can't be orthodox about everything.
No, because Vipassana and meditation has originated 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
People weren't walking around with these yokes in their hands. It's a totally different story. We have to change our breathing. And do you know what? Another question. You're a yoga instructor for 20 years. How has yoga, why has it? Imagine, I'll rephrase it differently. Because sometimes I say the wrong thing and I don't want to upset anybody. Imagine the potential for yoga.
Yeah.
That if every yoga instructor knew what you knew, that every student coming in through that door, that the yoga instructor was able to target their breathing from a biochemical point of view, a biomechanical point of view, resonance frequency point of view, surrendering to the discomfort, realizing how to activate the body's relaxation response, and take this into their everyday life. And it has not happened, Magnus. It has happened with a few people, but isn't it amazing? Like, the potential is enormous. What you're doing it's amazing.
Yeah. The first teacher I met who was talking about this explicitly like that was Simon Borg-Olivia. Mm-hmm. And after that, my encounter with him, I have taken 2 workshops of him sequential years because he came 2 times to Finland. That changed my teaching a lot, really. I started at the time where Ashtanga Yoga was about deep breath.
Yes.
And for some people, it still is. No hard feelings, but you're wrong. For me, it's always tell my students, breathe according to the situation. Don't overbreathe. If you're standing and doing nothing, it's a very light breath. But if you are in a very demanding pose, when your weight are totally on your hands or something like that, engaging your whole body, you will breathe differently. That's okay. But you still don't have to breathe more than the situation demands.
Yes. Yes. Hallelujah.
Yeah, I mean, the most simple thing in the world. Be natural.
It's so simple that it's been overlooked. As you know, people say common sense is not so common.
That's right. Hallelujah. Once again. Yeah.
And when you do the breath holds, do you
breath holds.
Do you do them on exhale or on the inhale?
I mostly do them on exhale. In preparations solely on the exhales. But I'm experimenting now. I'm experimenting. So this is not something I teach yet, but I'm experimenting with visualization and holding on inhalation for very extensive times. But I'm not sure about how to teach that yet. That really generates more heat, but I'm not opening that up yet. Because I found texts that describing this, and there are specific names for it, and all the shit with very complicated visualizations, and I try to make it simple. So I'm still experimenting. So perhaps in 2 years I come out and say, now let's do this, and then we all sit 2 hours in an ice bath.
So Patrick, for somebody who's listening, can you explain the difference between why you would do on the inhale or on the exhale? I think that's important.
I think the main things are the blood gases, but also the position of the diaphragm. So it's a very natural thing if we get into pain that we breathe in and hold our breath. So as we breathe in, the diaphragm is moving downwards, and the position of the diaphragm, there's some connection between this and pain. And the next time that somebody jumps on your big toe and you let a holler, you'll naturally breathe in and hold your breath. It's a natural kind of in reaction. With breath holding to disturb blood gases, if we breathe in, we're taking a full lungful of air into the lungs. There's a lot of oxygen in the lungs. We have to hold our breath for a really, really long time in order for the cells to use that oxygen up so that we can drop our blood oxygen saturation. So a breath in and a hold is not necessarily a hypoxic, it's more hypercapnia, that the CO2 is increasing, but oxygen may not necessarily be dropping. So we typically favor the normal inhalation and exhalation and hold, because the diaphragm is up into its resting position. And also we're doing a breath hold that where we find it's physiologically easier to drop the blood oxygen saturation and increase the carbon dioxide. And we've done it with squats as well, which is interesting that you're bringing it in, because the leg muscles during the breath hold, you seem to be able to drop the blood oxygen saturation quicker than say just during walking or whatever. But breath holds I find are phenomenal, but I would say is as well that they're not for everybody. And to do exactly, as we spoke about, to go very, very easy at the start and just gently build your body up to them. But there's something very primordial in all this, isn't there?
Yeah.
Breath holding, underwater immersion. Like, it's something that we've been doing since day dot, whether we have originated from the sea. And so it's almost that we are going back to basics.
I think that's very interesting, because I think that's exactly it. But now we have these devices like a pulse oximeter to measure if you do a breath hold on the exhale. You have aura rings to measure heart rate variability. So if you kind of combine these primordial things with actually technology that you can measure on yourself, you don't go around saying, well, I feel good. You can actually measure it, and you can see how much your HRV improved. You can see how your pulse rate dropped. You can see what happened to oxygen saturation. I think that's very, very important. So you can kind of own it yourself. You don't have to. So I think the combination of these two is very, very interesting.
Do you think there's also something else happening in terms of doing long breath holds that increases blood flow to the brain? And it's almost that we're getting the autonomic nervous system and we're shaking it. You're doing a long breath hold to increase blood flow, to increase carbon dioxide, drops blood pH as a calming effect in the brain. The long breath hold at the same time can have a stress effect. There's two things going on. You're combining the reduced volume breathing and breath hold. So on one hand, you're relaxing and down regulation. On the other hand, you're stressing. And then you're getting into the cold water and it's a stressor. And then you're coming out of that to recover. It's relaxing. And then it's kind of nice in a sauna. I don't know. I wouldn't consider a sauna to be a stressor, but maybe it is physiologically because it's ramping up the heartbeat a little bit.
Yeah.
It's doing something that we as modern human beings don't do. You know, we don't even walk down to the field. We get into our car, we turn a switch, everything is done for us kind of stuff.
We can always buy ourselves out of our uncomfort zone. If we don't want to go to the shop, we order delivery. We don't want to cook, we go to a restaurant. It's too cold outside, I stay inside. So it's kind of, you pay. This is a friend of mine, this metaphor. You're kind of painting yourself into a corner.
Yes.
You have no space to move anymore. So this is so this work I do, what you do, we're putting ourselves in a zone of uncomfort to feel comfortable in our uncomfortable zone. That enlarges our life. It expands our experience. We can feel much more appreciation for life, more gratefulness, more love, more stillness. Because if you always aim for your comfort zone, you can never get your comfort zone here. It's just one big noise. So you have to get out of the comfort zone to reduce the noise here. So that kind of ice cold peace of mind, it's what I've been looking for all my life. I made a professional career out of it.
And Magnus, finally, if you are really looking to push it, I mean, most people would say 5 minutes is really pushing it, but there are always different levels to the madness. So if you're quite experienced and want to take it further, would you say what extra is it? More exposure to the cold? Is it more breath work, or is it combination? Is it more also visualization, or what else do you do if you really want to push it, whatever 10-15 minutes or longer in the cold?
I would say push it. That now it comes paradoxical. Push it in a way that you stay even more relaxed.
Yeah.
So the point is not actually how long you stay, but how do you stay? What's your state, whole physiological and mental state while you are in the cold? How relaxed, how effortless can you be? The while you are in the cold. If you have to start fighting, get out. Then that's not the point. The point is to stay this is the most relaxing thing ever, like forever. But there comes a point when you will feel the first signs of hypothermia, small shivering. You should actually get out 30 seconds before that. That's very hard to do.
Yes, yeah. And Magnus, there's a dose and there's a duration here. So say, for example, we don't have ice typically in terms of outside our environment. The temperature is quite moderate. So people will be using baths. Cold water, but no ice. That's a dose of cold, but it's a lighter dose. And the duration then is the length of time that you're staying there. Is there any benefits just getting into a bath of cold water without ice for people who might be a little bit apprehensive the thought of the ice?
Of course. Anything that feels uncomfortable, staying comfortable with that sensation is beneficial. But there's nothing in the world like 0 degree water, 1 or 2 or 0 degree water. Even 4 degrees or God forbid 6 degrees is not the same. It's really not the same, because the cold water pools in most swimming holes we have has a temperature between 6 and 8 degrees. And people think that's terrible cold. I think, yes, it's terrible, but it's not cold enough. Because I mean, it's not the same effect. It's like diluting your coffee with water, God forbid.
It's interesting, Magnus. Patrick and myself, we always talk about changing states. How do you feel when you're in 0 degree water after, I don't know, at what minute, at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, are you usually the most relaxed?
For me, it's the 3 first minutes that are the hardest to get down to a very relaxed state. So after 3 minutes, it gets easier. And I say you get pretty good optimal results after 5 minutes. Then I get up, usually. But sometimes I stay longer. And when I stay really long, the rest of the day is like, I give this description. I did it in the book. It's like you are full of something that is really nothing. You have no thoughts. You're totally empty, but there's a wow going on. It's like Buddha who has taken a dose of cocaine.
What I was interested because you can measure these stuff with Oura rings and so on now. I know you've done it. I've done it. I don't know if anybody measured brainwaves. It would be extremely interesting because I know they do it on meditation and monks and so on. Somebody who can stay long enough to get readings if the brainwaves actually change. Because
that would be
there've been
very interesting.
Yeah.
Very
okay. So you haven't seen anything about that, have you?
No, I haven't tried it. I know a device which you put on like this.
Yeah.
And you try to synchronize your brain waves. I'm not so familiar about it, but that would be kind of the next step.
Yeah, I've actually heard about. I forget the name again.
Muse, I think it's Muse. Is it?
Yeah. So maybe that would work, but it would be very, very interesting because Patrick and myself usually talk about changing states.
Yeah.
So with breath work, which is you always have your breathing with you, so that's the best way. But if you can do it also, or stronger or faster with the cold, it'd be very interesting to measure to see what kind of response you get. Because some people respond differently to breath work versus the cold versus sauna versus training. So, and if you combine them, you may get stronger effects. So this is the difference between now and 20-year scale. You can actually measure these stuff.
In 20 years, we will know more. And what we know today about hormonal response is that dopamine goes up, like bang. And that's the sensation like cocaine. I never tried cocaine, but I have been on serious dopamine effects after the cold. that has been definitely. So I'm not on drugs.
So,
but also let me add what I would be most interested into research that measuring 3 hormones during the cold and after the cold, and that would be mentioned dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, because I have a theory that all these 3 hormonal levels are highly raised during and after the cold. So that would be kind of the same effect as ecstasy has. I never tried ecstasy, but I read a lot of research about it. And what is unique about that is that serotonin and dopamine are present at the same time, which is a unique effect. And I seriously expect those levels to be very high during cold exposure and after cold exposure. So that like today, MDMA assisted psychotherapy is coming. So what about cold exposure assisted psychotherapy?
There's no money to be made from it. It's not going to happen, Magnus.
Yeah, I know, it's tragic. Everything that's free, it's of no interest. Can't monetize it.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think it's been an absolute pleasure, Daniel. I'm just conscious of Magnus's time. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Magnus, and for you putting out your information as well. So really, it's been wonderful, you know. And just that when we were starting, I can only imagine you were saying that you were living off grid, and I was asking you about life-work balance. And what's your definition of life-work balance?
I'm a very bad example.
Well, we're probably the best one I've heard. Come on.
I know. So when I had my yoga studio less than 1 year ago, I was working quite a lot, really. And before that, I used to teach so much yoga that sometimes I got back pains. And that was kind of a sign for me. I've done too much now. Just take rest. Take a couple of days off. Take a lot of naps and chill. And nowadays, I just do this. I take a lot of naps and I chill. I do only gigs.
Yes. Yeah.
How's that for balance?
Yeah. No. It's so important, isn't it? It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Final words, Daniel.
No, that's it. I hope to come back to you, Magnus, and do more podcasts. It'll be interesting to see actually, doing more measurements and to see what you can get from this. So I'm looking forward to talk to you in the future.
Magnus Appelberg, if people want to reach out to you now that you have your business head and you've changed your email from Society of Ice Holes, so how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, they find my website, magnusappelberg.com.
And your new book.
But I'm not very good at maintaining that website. Best way is Instagram, IceLab Method.
Yeah.
Instagram, IceLab Method.
Great stuff. Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you, both of you. This was also an honor. Thank you.